Welcome to another edition of Spot On with Gauri Dwivedi. Today I'm in conversation with a man who understands military strategy, war games, what should be the next focus when India looks to address its national security concerns in the backdrop of the horrific Pahalgam terror attack. What should be India's priorities going forward? We decode with Lieutenant General Raj Shukla. So thank you so much for speaking to me.
Thank you, Gauri. Thank you for calling me. And I hope our conversation is spot on.
Indeed, sir. And if we start, we're talking at a time when there's great uncertainty, or rather there are concerns that India has in the backdrop of the attack. And while we've been putting our strategy in place, how do you see the next steps for India? We're going to come to, whether a war is possible and all that in just a bit. But I want to understand from you, sir, 10 days it's been since the attack has taken place. What should be India's next steps going forward?
So, we can look at the state of play, the current situation, and then we can spend some time on prognosis, as you said, what's going to happen. And finally, if we have time, I think this is a good moment to take stock of our wider national security challenges. So the state of play, as you said, it's been, 9 days now. And if you look back, in my view, this attack has crossed many paradigms. Now, what are they? We've had a long history of terror with Pakistan, Parliament attack. I've seen that, Kalu Chak, a whole lot of stuff, Nagrota. This time, it has been particularly gruesome. Look at that religious terror, the communal targeting, the sheer brutality and the savagery. What honeymoons turned into funerals. You had fathers being gunned down in cold blood in front of their children. Husbands being gunned down in cold blood in front of their wives, Lieutenant Narwal. And if this, that Takreer or that declamation of 16th April of General Asif Murir was a dog whistle to this. He made those references to jugular vein, Hindu-Muslim distinctions, two-nation theory. That makes him deeply complicit, the architect-in-chief of this, in my view. So in that sense, the savagery, brutality is one paradigm that's been caused. I've been saying this, I commanded the division in Baramulla. So you had Gulmarg, which was another tourist hub. You would have encounters about a kilometer away from Gulmarg, and Gulmarg would not be touched. This time in cold blood, you have taken down these tourists. From those days of Baramulla, I'm talking of the local outlook. When all this stone throwing and that Burhan Wani phase, you could see sullenness in the eyes of the Kashmiris. I went to Kashmir last year and I could see a new hope. I actually feel that, prosperity was returning, the economy was growing, tourist footfalls. I think last year there were 3-point-some crores, and my it is to be thousands. One welcome thing from all this is, or let me say, the attack has been so heinous that even the locals, you can see anger and anguish. I've heard somebody saying, they've hit our whole hospitality, our traditions of hospitality, so on and so forth. So it has struck the soul of Jammu and Kashmir. It's a challenge to our secular fabric. It is a challenge to Bharat and Bharatiyata. And it is also a challenge to the facade and substance of Indian power. Therefore, that is one part of it. And just, let me just, take it back a couple of decades. The moral high is with us. Look at our strategic restraint. So many years. Even when we decided to respond in Prime Minister Modi's first tenure, Balakot or the surgical strikes, it was messaging that kindly wake up.
Yes.
Please look at this. And look at this cross provocation. And there is a reason. The Pakistani state, when it is in the captivity of the ISI and the Pak army, they have run out of options in their statecraft. So you just pull out that old rusted arrow of terror, that's all they can think of. And so I think, people say, what do we do? I say we have no option but to respond. They have left us with no option. So that is one part of it. Now that we have to, we need great strategic clarity, because after all, you are using the instrument of force. Yes. So our responses have to be reasoned, rational, cool and calm, quite divorced from the emotions And we must also tap the groundswell of support. You know, these body bags have gone to Kerala, Karnataka, Gujarat.
Entire country. They've gone to the entire country. Yes.
The country is shaken. I mean, I think it is quite unprecedented that even the political solidarity has been across sections, across the aisle. So all the support now has to be channelized properly into the, I would say this pain and anguish must not dissipate in anger, but must be channelized properly into well thought through what I call military kinetics, calibrated action, which is well thought through the entirety of the action and the response paradigm. It must also be said that the Pakistani army is not a pushover. So we have to give it due respect, but I do think, you know, our strategizing has to be now very wise, thoughtful. It cannot be crowdsourced, you know, कि वो लोग क्या कह रहे हैं, वो क्या कह रहे हैं. And I may also say, you know, this is serious stuff, calibrated action. So Mike Tyson once said that everybody has a strategy till he's punched in the face.
Indeed, always. Yes.
So we might have a strategy, but things will go wrong, things may not go right. But I think this is the time now to unleash, and I say it, you know, very thoughtfully, to unleash the might and fury of the Indian Armed Forces on the Pak Army, the ISI, not the nation, the terror ecosystem. So I think this is the, you know, what I have to say by it.
Do you think this time around the response will be different from an Uri, from a Balakot? And what would that difference and distinction be? You mentioned that it has to go and hit the Pakistani army. So how will it be different from?
So your question is spot on, because it lies in it's the nub of the matter. How should we respond? Now we have a bevy of responses. We've set the stage through the Indus Water Treaty and the other measures that are being taken, whatever they are, sanctions, economics. But I think, even when I look at it thoughtfully, this time, the centrality of that response package has to be calibrated kinetics. And I'll tell you why. What do we aim to do? If we wish to re-establish deterrence, you know, contrary to popular impression, when Balakot happened, the Pak army did learn a lesson. I saw General Bajwa, one of the first army chiefs, to say geoeconomics. They had some internal deliberations and they conceded that terror was a misplaced option in their statecraft. That seems to have worn off now. So you have to re-establish.
Back to the same tricks.
So what do we need to do? The action has to be such that we have to take out terror as a tool of statecraft from the mind space of the terror ecosystem. Next time you think of an option like this, you should be hit so hard that you banish the thought for a year. Now, it's not going to be easy, but it needs to be done.
How do we do for a country where you have the defense minister being on record saying, yes, humne to kiya hai. You have major opposition leaders saying, yes, we did it. It was part of our, it was in our past, we did it. Openly admitting to global media. So how do you do that to a country which acknowledges its terror factories?
Yeah, so look, so now the time has come to tell them that why it is such a misplaced option. And so you're absolutely right. How have they done it? They realized sometime in 1988 or so, during brass tacks, General Sundarji of 1990, it was a massive exercise where we showed them our conventional power. And it was such an exercise that we suggested that if we just wheel to the right, there you go. You know, massive mechanized formations. That's the time they realized, Mirza Aslam Beg, the army chief, that you cannot match Pakistan, India in the conventional domain. Look, what is it, $4 trillion, $0.38 trillion.
Yes.
Forex, ours is $680 billion. You are $6 billion. Kuch to akal rakho yaar, sharam rakho. So they know it. So they adopted this terror. And how did they construct it? What I call this nuclear bogey. It's a schoolboy bluff. Ki here's our nuclear weapons. Sahibzada Yaqub Khan, one of their old foreign ministers, had the temerity to tell Mr. Gujral that we'll open with nuclear stuff. Now look at this. When the international community or some of us fall to this argument, what is it? The strategic rationale of nuclear weapons cannot be that under the cover I'll go on a terror rampage. So this bluff just has to be called. It's a schoolboy bluff. Now, operational art, generalship lies in orchestrating your instrument of force in such a manner that you cause damage where it is due, but keep it below the threshold of the nuclear paradigm. All military minds know what the red lines are. So we will decide what those red lines are. You won't tell us what those red lines are. And what they do very cleverly after a terror strike, move the needle to these debates. So India mein bhi baat ho rahi hai, nuclear, and keep going, doing that stuff merrily. Their defense minister and their prime minister, I mean, very respectfully don't count in the system. I mean, he may sit at the head, but Asim Munir chairs the conference. So it's pointless talking to them. And this ecosystem, you know, the ISI, the Pak army, there are ways of delivering the message to it. So look what we are doing now. What do I mean by calibrated kinetics? So we have options across domains: air, sea, land, space, EW, cyber. There are instruments from submarines to aircraft carriers. We have two, you have none. Special forces, the pivot corps, the strike corps, and there are escalatory options along the ladder, escalatory ladder. So there are these bevy of options, which I'm sure the CDS and the service chiefs will now dissect, analyze, and the chosen option will maximize lethality. You have to strike hard, while de-risking it to the extent possible. No war option is without risks, so de-risking it to the extent possible. And we've seen some good signs. I'll tell you two good signs. Many crises in the past, one of our major deficits was politico-military incongruence. Today you see great congruence. Not only the initial meetings, but the subsequent meetings means that they're in deeper dialogue. We have a CDS now.
How much of a confidence is that for the military when there is this kind of alignment when it comes to interests and also approaching a particular issue? You know, when you talked about politico-military
It's great because you see many conflicts in the past. There was great politico-military dissonance. In fact, that has been one of the, what shall I say, the key problems in our national security system. This time, at least, the imagery tells you that there is a lot of convergence.
Yes.
Even the follow-up meetings. So now all these options will be debated with the political class because the final go has to be political. And we also have very options. See, we should be in no hurry. These strikes should not be crowdsourced. Ki bhai kuch karna hai. And we have options. Field Marshal Manekshaw said 9 months. Yeah. He told Indira Gandhi 9 months. What Balakot was a fortnight.
Yes.
Parakram, we mobilized for a year and we didn't go in. So there are a whole lot of options for all kinds of reasons. They will be calibrated, and of course the green signal will have to be political. The point I was making about the CDS was, before this we've had service chiefs. So, you know, the services would create their own options. And they were great. Even in the 97 T1 victory, Chief Marshal Lal was not too happy with the use of the Air Force. In Kargil, you know the problem. The political direction was that don't cross the LOC.
Yes.
These inhibitions are not going to be there this time. And the office of the CDS is valuable because you will get integrated military options. So a lot of the, shall I say, strategizing and all seems to be in place. Our military prowess also is considerable. Now it's a matter of, you know, unleashing it. So what is going to see, a few things very quickly. Conflict initiation. When do you initiate? Where do you initiate? These are big questions of war and peace.
Yes.
And 71, it took 9 months.
Yes.
Then which is the flank of decision? It has for very long been the land. Why should it always be the land? We have prowess in other domains. Issues like escalatory dominance. Now, these are matters of military detailing.
But I'll simplify it, you know,
yes,
for our viewers to also, you know, when you talk about where should we start the war, what should be our primary, you know, usage, or whether it should be naval, whether it should be air force, whether it should be land.
Flank of decision.
Yeah, flank of, where should we actually attack, you know, if at all we do, where should that be? Those are very important aspects.
Strategic balance. We shouldn't forget we have a neighbor to the north.
I was coming to just that, you know, when you are talking about such difficult, dynamic decisions, you know, when you decide on one of it, there's also dynamic developments that are taking place. India also lives in a hostile neighborhood. Yes. How do we address, you know, for long we've been talking about a two-front war, and, you know, there have been so many discussions around it. At a time like now, we may be inching towards some normalcy, a thaw with China, but let's not forget, Chinese did come out very strongly in support of Pakistan in the last couple of days. How do you see that playing out in the kind of military strategy that India would be undertaking?
So thank God you brought it up, because see, I am of the view people talk of Israel having grim national security challenges. Look at ours. Look at the North. China, let's leave the other stuff. Just the military component of the power differential with China is $450 billion. And you must appreciate that China has carried out the most massive military modernization in the history of mankind. So there is a problem there, but because we have rebalanced it, I am pretty confident that we'll hold that line. We will deter. Chinese collusivity is a given. There's no military, no secret that space, their Baidu systems, INT, ISR, all that will be shared. That's a reality. Also, I'm a little surprised that, we've now woken up to the Turkish angle. Erdogan was here 2 months back. There have been massive drone deals signed. So it's not only Pakistan, it's Pakistan, Turkey and China. Yes. Let's not talk of Bangladesh, where you have that Lal Monir hot air base. Yunus suddenly discovering the landlockedness of our northeastern states. Look at the Bangladesh inventory, IOR, 400 ship navy. So the point is this, that...
Do you think Bangladesh will come in support of Pakistan?
No, it will not. Nor will the Chinese. I'm not making that point. So there is collusivity of other kinds, but China will not physically come in support. What I'm saying is that these are realities. They have to be accepted. And we are aware of this for long. It's factored into our plans, collusivity and all that stuff. But what I wish to point out to the general audience is that please realize that our challenges are grim. Not that they cannot be surmounted, but they are grim. We need to pay attention to these challenges. And since you brought it up, let me say this. See, today we are the 5th largest economy, 3rd largest economy soon to be. We are now in the gymnasium of bigger power competition. So we have to step up our game in national security in terms of long-term investments, technological prowess, that kind of stuff. Because this is just the first challenge. Between now and Viksit Bharat, in this travel to Amrit Kal, there will be numerous other national security challenges. I feel this is a minor bump. Many more things are going to happen. So this should be a good way to sit up. Not that stuff is not happening, but we need to accelerate pace and scale, because that is the national security reality. You tell me another way of solving it. For very long, India has invested in soft power. Now the hard power needs to step up to the game.
And I think both are important, but they can't replace each other. Soft power has its own, expectations, outcomes, and what it can achieve. But hard power has its own requirement. So,
we've all heard of Vasudev Kutumbakam. Lovely idea, one earth, one family, one futures. But I keep saying we must not forget the wisdom of Swami Vivekananda, who said, the world is but a gymnasium where nations come to make themselves strong. So both. So you may call it smart. And if that were not enough, China and all this, look at technology, look at Ukraine. Technology, General Mark Milley says, we are seeing, such profound changes in technology as we have not seen in recorded history. Dronery, AI killing machines, quantum, this is happening in Ukraine.
Technology is the X factor right now.
It's driving geopolitics and national security like never before.
Given that national security has now become a very important aspect right now from a public discourse point of view also, we are discussing this right now. How do you expect this from a larger, you mentioned that, this is one challenge, there could probably be more. This is our immediate challenge, maybe there'll be more. What do you envisage our priorities should be from an investment point of view, from resource allocation point of view, and also from a roadmap and a vision point of view?
So I think this government has done well to begin what I call a national security makeover. So that began in 2016-17. CDS DMA. I mean, now that these debates are, deepening, this crisis will help get focus to these issues. Chief of Defense Staff, Department of Military Affairs. It is even more powerful than America's Barry Goldwater Nichols. Look at Atmanirbharta in defense. For the first time, we are getting startups and private sector into this whole game. Who's driving the stuff in Ukraine? It's not Boeing, not Lockheed, not NASA, Elon Musk, Alex Karp, Palantir, Palmer Luckey. Startups, because they're agile to give you stuff in national security. We have begun that. Defense coming out of the shadows of foreign policy. I've seen this in my lifetime. New normals in our strategic outlook. Balakot, Kailash. Yet, given the equity of the challenge, China, all these issues that we said, character of war, it is an incomplete makeover. We need to have to step up our game, even our economic statecraft. Let me raise this issue because we just have to attend to it. Is it wise to spend just 1.98% of your GDP on defense in the face of all this? And people say it costs money. I say deterrence is costly, but wars are costlier. Ask the Ukrainians.
Yes.
So economic statecraft.
And a lot of our money also, it's not just capex. A lot of it also goes in our revenue, day-to-day expenses.
Absolutely. So the
capex condition is actually even
armed
lesser.
forces need to get more, See, there are two things here now. The armed forces need to reduce their bloat. The whole MOD ecosystem of PSUs need to remove their, lethargy and bloat. We need to get better bang for the rupee. So there are many issues on this. But see, it should not get... The debate is very nuanced. Each aspect has to be understood. For example, this bit that you simply downsize, you look at what's happening in J&K now. In Ukraine, that's not the lesson. So you have to reduce bloat. You have to get, the whole defense ecosystem in terms of your PSUs, DRDO, R&D, technology, armed forces, structures, thought. This innovation cannot happen at the rate of regulation. We have to deregulate greatly. And ultimately, what is the purpose of all this? The purpose of all this is that all your technologies and capacities have to flow to the soldier, sailor, and airman in the field. It has to be directed at mission readiness and lethality. So it's a humongous challenge that...
Isn't there an inertia, sir, when it comes to deregulation, reducing bureaucracy?
Absolutely.
And the classic, back and forth that happens between the military men and the babus in Delhi?
That is one facet. Within the militaries itself, the babudom is across the board. So, of course, the civil bureaucracy, including the military bureaucracy, the whole... And see, you have to be in the system to understand it. It's not malintention. They have been designed to create process. Actually, you need outcomes. You look at what the Trump administration is doing, how they are, reducing bloat in the Pentagon. We can do it here. Cultural transitions. Defense innovation will not happen at the rate of L1 and GSQR and all that stuff. It just, our whole system is designed for a monopsony market, or was designed. One buyer, armed forces, one seller, HAL. No choices and all regulation. Yes. This has to go. And I was very glad.
That mindset change is already happening.
So you're right. It's a cultural transition, what you said. And I think the Defense Secretary, when he spoke, first Defense Secretary I heard who said that our DPP is broken. Honesty. Now, on that honesty, you have to build profound change. So as the Prime Minister said, 2014, I think addressing the Combined Commanders Conference, he said, we've had a lot of good people in the armed forces. Leadership has been brave and valorous. We now need thought leaders who can drive change to the national security system. So, complex challenge. You need this change. And yet you need operational readiness. Look at this.
Yes.
Well, suddenly you'll be asked to be, ready for a situation. So, a bevy of challenges. This is one, but in my view, this is just the beginning of a...
What do you think are the other challenges we need to prepare for?
Look at the lag with China, for one. It's pretty obvious. And the way to address the Chinese lag cannot be merely by money. It needs these cultural transitions, technological investments. So I'll give you one example. AI. We've been talking for years about it. Look what the Trump administration has done. Hexit. He said, no more, debates in this. What are we doing? He picks two commands, Eurocom, IPACOM. So these are the objectives, combat objectives, precision strike, EAVO, facilitation, AI. So AI agents, Endural. No L1 Shell 1 because we know Endural is competent. LLMs, Microsoft. Action plan, 2 years. We need to enable the Northern Command, Eastern Command, the theater commanders when they come. See what will happen with the theater commander. We are designed to look up to the LAC, not beyond. In the context of Bangladesh, Myanmar, the theater commander must keep an eye on threats developing from Bangladesh, Myanmar, and not meet them when they come to your doorstep.
But so here is a country where, if such actions are taken, then CAG will come back and say that, these many lakh crores of assumed corruption happened and,
Exactly.
I'm just giving an example. I'm not making light of an issue.
You're absolutely right. So that whole bureaucratic mindset needs to be changed. After all, the CAG are a bunch of responsible people. They can be persuaded with these ideas because the world is changing.
Let me then come to the other aspect. You mentioned about US, you mentioned about Pentagon. There is now greater alignment, at least after Pahalgam. There are discussions that are taking place at the defense minister's level, at the external affairs minister's level. And also there is greater coordination between intelligence sharing and stuff. Where do you see this in terms of US-India relationship from a defense point of view, greater alignment point of view?
So just, two quick points. I think the next 20, 25 years are going to be the strategic competition between a challenged hegemon, USA, it is challenged, still the leader by far, but challenged. A rising challenger, China, very potent, we must acknowledge, and an aspiring Vishwabandhu, India. Now we have to see how can we leverage the American relationship to complicate matters for China. But things are pretty, shall we say, fluid. China now, in its competition with the USA, has been outreaching to us in many ways.
Yes.
So it is a complex game of diplomacy, the use of force and all that stuff. That's one point. The American relationship, I'm a little gung-ho about it personally because, not for any other reason, our interests are aligned. Mm-hmm. So we should banish this thought from our mind that the Americans will ever shed blood in treasure for us. Log puchte hain, will he come and fight for you? Of course not. Why should he? He will not fight. But he is a very valuable partner in this technology business. So emerging technologies, AI, quantum, all this kind of stuff. We could leverage the Americans for the asymmetric leveraging of China. There are a whole lot of stuff there. So let me give you technology. Just one example, which I keep giving. What we can do in technologies. 2003 to 2007, in all these emerging technologies, AI, quantum, blockchain, USA, sole superpower, was by far the leader. 60 out of 65 it led. Then the Chinese did 1,000 talents plan, diaspora strategy, all that stuff. 2019 to 23, Gauri, China leads in 57 out of 65. Look at the dramatic inversion. Now the good news is India is number 3 in many of these technologies, in 10 of them. Distant third, but third. Can we say that we'll pick these 10 technologies and 10 years we'll be the lead in this, and all these technologies have civil military use? This is the way, and to do that you will need American assistance.
So will you give an example, sir, one technology that has a military use that, just for our viewers to understand, to correlate that what is this tech advantage we are talking about?
What I call dronery. Before Ukraine, this was not even a military lexicon, dronery. We just saw drones being used in weddings. What has happened in Ukraine? At the intersect of AI, precision targeting, Starlinks, all that stuff, the mix of, say, explosives with microelectronics, you got these drones, $1,000 drones. Look at the havoc they've caused. 80% of Russian losses have come not from infantry, not from armor, not from artillery. I'm an artilleryman. I have to eat the humble pie. Not from air power, but from drones. Look at this, 80% from drones. Ukraine, a country without a navy, took crude drones and Starlinks, Elon Musk's Starlinks, and knocked the Black Sea Fleet, the iconic Black Sea Fleet, out of Sevastopol. If this doesn't wake up to what technology is doing, nothing will. It is as dramatic and profound as that. Yes. So it is the leveler. Ukraine is without an air force and the navy. If it is still in the fight, it is because of technological innovation. Yes. This is what technology can do.
That's true. That is the real X factor going forward. If we were to come back to the immediate right now, going into this discussion and this recording, there was a very interesting discussion we were having on the floor with my colleagues. And the one thing that many people asked, and there are still no answers, is, ma'am, wo abhi tak pakde kyun nahi gaye? Very basic, we're talking about some very important issues, but we come back to the basic because, that's the psyche of a lot of people. Even on our floor, so many are asking. I am asking to myself that when we talk about India's next options, while there are long-term, medium-term, immediate, there are these fundamental questions. And you help us understand, sir, from a terrain point of view, from what is it about the region that is making the present operation also so complex?
So I have seen this many times in the past. You see, there have been terror attacks where there have been fedayeen attacks. I mean, they came to die. Yes. There have been attacks where, I mean, I can imagine the pressure on GOC-15 Corps and the others to get these chaps. But the fact remains that they have recce'd that pretty well. I'm told that recce 5-6 selected on this, selected the recce route out, and that place, if you've seen those Kishtawar ridges, are full of forests and all. And I have this hunch that they would be wanting to cross the Pir Panjal. They've been doing it for long.
Go back to line of
16 core zone, get down to Jammu and exfiltrate. That could be the larger design. Or this side of the Pir Panjal, they would have no known reception areas. So I do understand the public expectation. They should be nabbed. I'm told 3-4 days back they were spotted, but no contact could be established. So it is a tough call. But if you have to ask why, you just see the terrain. Yeah. And so I'm not justifying it, but it is difficult. And sometimes I see frustration stepping in. But for all these reasons, terrain, coordination, all this stuff, sometimes, you know, things do happen. You will find that for 2 weeks you have no luck and suddenly there is a contact and all that. But yes, but see, the larger question I must, since you raised it, you know, this question of intelligence failure and all that. Fine. See, something went wrong, so this happened, no doubt. But, and I'm sure, you know, the whole geometry of that infiltration now would be being dissected. Ki bhai, where did they get in from? What were the avenues? What were the reception areas? Where did they hide? Why was it not?
And all the whole sequence of events. Yeah.
And very, very legitimate. But see, in the larger construct, we must not allow these debates to subtract from the primary objective, which is what? If you have a state sending in 50, 60 groups, 2 will get in. 1 will strike. Therefore, the only way, which country in the world does this? Terror is your tool of statecraft. So they have for decades. So they have to be hit to re-establish that deterrence. So while the questions that you raise are legitimate, I pointed out to you the difficulties, and it will happen, and it just takes a little bit of time. But the larger issue is this: you have to re-establish deterrence.
That's an important point you made, and which is why I didn't raise the issue of Intel also, because there are only, the discussion should only be focused that much about Intel failure and more towards what should be the options going forward and what should be our forward planning. And as we wrap this up, sir, you know, this has been very exhaustive. We've covered a lot of ground, but there's one thing that I feel that this conversation from our viewers will be interesting if I sort of address some of the questions that my colleagues were asking me, one of which was, we understand land warfare, we've seen that. What is it about the naval warfare that we can, I wouldn't say expect, because no one knows what's going to happen, but what it may look like, only to better understand. If you could tell us and our viewers that when we talk about naval warfare, in the context of Pakistan, how will it that India can you know, what has been the kind of planning that has gone in or will go into when it comes to naval options?
So I'm not a naval expert, I'm an army guy, but let me just attempt it. So you see how...
No, from a military point of view, from a military strategy
point of view. So look at it, 1965, a joint secretary in the MOD signed a letter to the naval chief that don't cross this longitude because you will not escalate. So that was our understanding of naval power. 71, we used it with great effect. What was that strike on Kukri, Karachi Harbour, all that stuff. Look at this time, and I'm telling you as an army man, I think our maritime, the edge in the maritime domain is humongous. Aircraft carriers, nuclear-powered submarines, which means you can be undersea for a while, for a pretty long time. The third leg of the nuclear triad is in the sea. We have it, he doesn't. Yes. So the number of ships, we have a huge advantage. It could be used to blockade, temporary blockade, permanent blockade. They are so scared of a blockade that, what is his name? Kidwai. Kidwai said that a blockade will be a red line for a nuclear response. Yes. And they know our naval prowess. In the past, because of this hang-up of not escalating, we didn't use the other instruments.
We created our own handicaps.
Yes,
when none existed.
Bilkul. So if we remove those shackles, the Indian military has got width and depth. It's got the air diamond. Look at the air diamond. Last time we didn't have Rafales.
Yes.
We have Rafales.
We have Rafales.
We have SAM, what is that, S-400.
Yes.
So I think this time our military prowess is pretty significant,
very sharp,
if
yes.
not overwhelming.
Final question, sir. What would be your message as a military general? What would be your message to all those people who've been saying that, or who say that war never solves any solution? Even every time there is always this section of people who come back and say that all over again. We are hearing those voices now also. What would be your message to those people who are saying that?
So two things. One is they must listen to Chanakya, who said कि अगर अपने शास्त्र को भूलोगे तो अपनी संस्कृति खो दोगे, शस्त्र का त्याग करोगे तो राष्ट्र ही खो दोगे. What was he saying? Of course, wars don't solve any problem, but wars, what does the instrument of force do? If you keep it in the center of your strategic calculus and keep it nourished, it deters. It deters.
Yes.
If you do not keep it nourished, there is a deterrence breakdown and war results. So of course wars don't solve many problems, but you must invest in your military instrument because it deters.
Yeah.
That is the principal issue. So deterrence reinforces peace. So spend on defense that which you must. So that is one argument. The second argument is that when you don't do so and such a situation gets created, what are you going to tell the Pakistanis? Talk.
Yes.
You have no option. So wars do not solve problems, but they help driving sense into people who don't understand the futility of wars. So the point is this: the instrument of force needs to be nourished. When you nourish the instrument of force, it is not warmongering. When you invest in deterrence, it is peacemaking. And now look at China, look at Bangladesh. You have to invest so that you deter possible responses. That is the whole idea. What is, this business of power projection? Power projection means you project power so that you address threats when they are distant and not when they land up at your shores. So nobody is warmongering. I'm saying deterrence. If you see the Bangladeshi inventory becoming Chinese 70-75%, take a series of steps. So actually it should be statecraft, diplomacy, the instrument, the military instrument, economics, all coming together. And what better way than to draw the attention of what Vivekananda said, what I just pointed out, that at the end of the day, nations come, the world is a gymnasium, akhada hai, where nations come to make themselves strong. So what your colleagues on the floor are saying comes from this Indian perspective, which I have also seen for pretty long. Soft power. Soft power is very useful. So is hard power useful.
Indeed.
So wisdom lies in combining the two.
Absolutely. Absolutely, sir. And thank you so much for this very exhaustive conversation. We covered a long arc of India's military strategic needs, requirements, abilities, thoughts, now to the future. Thank you so much for joining me on Spot On.
Calling me. A great pleasure speaking to you and through you to your viewers. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.